Where did you spend your childhood?
Part of it in Camberwell Green and then evacuation in Leighton Buzzard.
What were you there for?
Just over a year. I don't think it was 18 months, it was just over a year.
Can you remember what year it was?
Yes, we was bombed in 1940, evacuated because my mother was pregnant, and my brother was born in 41, and we came home towards just after Christmas 42.
Can you remember the reason that you came back?
Yes, my father was working in London. Travelling was very difficult. They didn't have a lot of money, so it was also expensive. And he couldn't get away because of his job, so we came back to be with him. Mum had 5 children, so she didn't work. My dad was in the business of repairing houses that had been bombed for people to live in.
When you were in London, was the bombing very extensive where you were locally?
Yes, quite a lot, night after night.
Were the German bombers picking particular targets, or was it just general bombing?
It was just general bombing. It was just a general bomb that bombed our house we lived in to start with.
So your house actually suffered bomb damage?
Yes, we did.
Was that severe?
Yes, took the front of the house off for the reason why we was evacuated. We had nowhere to live.
So you were evacuated, but your mum and dad stayed in London?
No, Mum came with us because she was pregnant, and they got pregnant ladies out of London, or big cities at that time.
But your father remained in London?
Yes, he did.
The house that you were living in that was bombed, was that ever repaired?
I don't really know. I never thought about that. I don't think it was, because the front was completely gone. It was just half the house left.
So you were evacuated,
Yeah.
and then when you returned, you came to a different
Yes.
different property.
Yes, we did. So it was a bit further over to the Brixton side of Camberwell. Salvation Army had some flats that their personnel used to live in, and the government took these from the people for the people that were bombed out or who wanted to live in London, so we moved there.
After your parents were separated for a time, and then they got back together, did their relationship change, or were you still a good, happy family?
No, we were still family. It was only he couldn't get away because of his job. And once the baby was born, we then came back home.
Did it affect your schooling and education?
It did, because when I did go to school, a lot of the time I was under the table or down in the shelter rather than on the desk looking at my books, because of the bombing around London at the time.
Was there ever a time when you went into some of the traditional shelters, like the Underground, for example?
Never went into the Underground, but where we lived when we moved back, they had general shelters built to hold most of the people that lived in the block of flats that I lived in.
Are there any particular experiences that you can remember, whether they're good or bad?
One that keeps coming back is I was sent to get some bread, joined the queue because there was always queues, and in the next street, or a couple of streets away, one of those rockets, when they first started to come over, landed. They were rather loud. Everybody hit the deck. I found I was then able to walk over them and became front of the queue. And then when I got my bread and went home. And that was the one that does stick in my mind. Yeah.
So that sounds like a good experience
Yes,
in a way. So were there any that weren't so good?
We did have one that we didn't use the shelter to start with because there was lots of people there and parents couldn't sleep because of the noise. But this particular night we had a pilot, a friendly pilot, had been shot. He was injured and he had dropped his shells, not his bombs, his shell, landed in the middle of the quadrangle of where we lived, and on the bottom flap was a sailor who had come home after his boat had been torpedoed and was in dry dock being mended. He got the shrapnel straight through the door into his stomach. So we all then used to use the shelters.
Did that particular gentleman recover?
No.
Oh.
We thought that was very sad.
So are there any other particular experiences that you remember?
Just standing outside this particular shelter one summer evening and listening to the bombs going over, and the doodlebug came over, and watching it actually, because it was something to see with the flames going out the back. When it stopped, only to be dragged in by the collar because it was coming down. So yes, that was a bit of a surprise. Not the watching of it coming down, but being pulled in out of the way.
Did that happen very often?
No, that only happened to me once. I didn't do it again.
I was just thinking that must have made you feel quite excited in a way, seeing that, or were you a bit frightened as well?
No, we was children. It was exciting, and before we was evacuation, I can remember seeing the planes fighting up in the sky, and that was exciting to watch that as well. And to go getting bits of shrapnel to keep as trophies the next day, it was just a matter of, you was a child and you just didn't really know what the war was doing.
In that sense, did you see part of the Battle of Britain?
I did a little of it, but I was very young, so I can't give you any details. I could just see the planes in my head.
After the war ended, did you discuss any of your experiences together?
Not really, no. No.
So it was a case that once the war had ended, that was it?
Yeah, we had to get on with life. Yeah.
Presumably it took a long while to rebuild the parts of London that
Yes,
you were
it
living
did.
in.
Mm.
Can you remember how long that took?
Not really, but up to the 50s, early 50s, a lot of it was still being mended, rebuilt, pulled down. And the only thing that just, you're talking about that, was the water tanks that they built. If their house was bombed and it had a cellar, they would brick it up and put water in it, put the others for firing. And in the winter it would freeze, and it's health and safety. Children all used to fly around it in skates. Yeah, so you just don't have any fear of these things when you're a child. And yeah, so we always used to sit up on the wall and watch all the boys doing their skating on the ice. My husband used to go in with a bathtub in the water and use it as a boat. It was just fun.